Good day, everybody. This is Sam Shihab, and with me,
Brian Burke.
and we're going to be talking about the February Visa Bulletin today, and we're going to break out some great numbers and details about what the State Department is doing in terms of approvals, what we're looking at in terms of the EB2 and the EB3 competing, what's the best decision for you. So we'll be back in a second to break it down for you. All right, so the Visa Bulletin for the month of February is out, and good movement in the EB2, stagnant everywhere else. And so we took a quick look into what these numbers mean and what's going on. And Brian, let's first break down the Visa Bulletin.
Yeah, sure. I have it up here. Yep. And let's get to the slide of it. All right. So there we are. It's the, well, that's the dates for filing chart. And Sam, what's the big news about dates for filing? It's that they're going to abide by them, right?
That's crazy. USCIS is buying into the dates for filing, which is great news.
Yeah, it's pretty surprising. So the big news on dates for filing, the only real movement is EB2 India, which moves forward about 2 months. That means, well, Sam, what does it mean to you?
Well, the bucket, right? The size of the bucket. So obviously, the Visa Bulletin is, there are two dates. You have the filing date and the final action date. And the difference between the two tells you really the bandwidth in terms of the government accepting cases. So if you are trying to understand what is the State Department is thinking, the narrower the distance between the two, the less visa that's going to be available. So the filing date moves 6 months for EB2. The final action date moves 2 months. Good positive movement, but I think it shows that the State Department is a little bit nervous about visa availability. They like what they see in the EB2, but there may be more tightening going forward.
Yeah, and now we're going to look at its friend, the final action date chart. And, you know, the big change there is EB2 India goes forward about 6 months. And to me, Sam, that means, hey, we're approving cases. You know, it means we got through 6 months worth of green card availability. Let's keep it moving onward. Let's give people green cards. That's a good thing. The only other thing of note is that EB2 China moved forward about 1.5 months. So it's good. It means people are getting their green card, Sam. I like that.
Now, I have to revisit this, I guess, every time we talk about this. Is in your opinion, the movement in the EB2, 6 months movement, is that related to approvals in the downgraded cases, you believe?
EB2 moving, I don't know. I mean, EB2 is still going forward. I guess it has to. Yeah, I guess it has to be. It means it means we're applying through cases. Give us the next one. It means we still have. It means if it's moving forward, it means we still have bandwidth. We haven't run out of visas, and we're approving.
Or we have cleared some visas that were downgraded to the EB3,
perhaps,
which were approved, and now we can free them up.
Yeah, I guess we got to talk to Sam about the fact that EB3 is basically locked. It has not moved this month.
Stagnant.
Yeah.
And we see now the EB2 getting
it's really pulling ahead
of EB3, and we've been saying that all along that it's going to happen, but when?
Yeah, and this
is
now. And this is the stagnation of the EB3. It can always be worse. I mean, I don't like seeing it not move, right? But it can be worse. It could say unavailable. It could say, oh, we are entirely out of visas. We're not taking any more cases. So it seems to suggest they're still approving. They still have EB3 cases to approve, but they're doing everything they can to not take more.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yes.
So
I think they're narrowing the bandwidth a little bit. Okay, which is good.
Yeah.
If you are in the EB3. Or you filed your case in the EB3, you downgraded, filed your case in the EB3, and you're seeing that the EB2 is moving forward, you must be a little bit frustrated. And I think you're asking, well, what is the solution? What shall I do? And obviously, no one case is same as the other case, but clearly, I mean, we're seeing people interfiling, we're seeing people filing another adjustments. The question is, what's the best for me? And we've talked about that over and over, and we can talk about it more, and we can answer questions on this topic. But clearly, if you're seeing no movement in your case and you're seeing that the EB2 is getting closer to you, maybe something has to happen. You have to do something. But unfortunately, the interfiling, you jump off the EB3 line to the EB2 line, and then
if everybody gets out of the EB3 line, it's like traffic. You know, it's you get out of one line and you get out of one lane and you say, it starts moving, and you drive yourself mad.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it can be a tough decision you have to make.
Yeah. So Sam, we have, that's the Visa Bulletin, and obviously everybody get your Visa Bulletin related questions and what to do, because that's, I expect a lot of Q&A about that subject. But Sam, I thought, when we talked about this and we said, let's take a look at, what the Department of State said they were going to be doing, said it was going to be happening, and take a look at the data and see what the government has actually been doing and whether or not they're doing a good job, I guess, is what we were doing.
Do we want to revisit what Charlie used to tell us?
Yeah. I mean, I think that'll put a lot of the charts we're about to look at in context. So Charles Oppenheim retired from the Department of State at the beginning of December, and right before he left, he gave a little bit of a talk with American Immigration Lawyers Association, and I have sort of taken his, notes here. And we'll sort of discuss what he was saying there at the very end. So regarding EB2 India, he was saying original plan was to be aggressive for the first 3 or 4 months of the fiscal year, scale back while monitoring the impact of aggressive movement. Seems kind of what we've seen. We've seen big leaps forward EB2. And basically, you're going to maybe see movement forward again once again later if things are warranted.
If this is aggressive movement, in your opinion, Brian,
yeah,
do you think that EB3 not moving during the aggressive movement time, that maybe we're looking at potential retrogression for EB3?
I mean, I said what could be worse for EB3. I was thinking about saying U for unavailable, but retrogression it seems to be, if they can't move it, it seems to suggest that there's no more, they have no more appetite for visas,
yes.
and it makes me wonder if they have too many, such that they have to formally roll it back to prevent anybody else who might be a straggler from filing their case.
Right. Or freeze it, maybe not move it forward.
Yeah.
If it's aggressive time for EB2 and EB3, and EB3 is not moving, then definitely does not bode well for the EB3 category going forward.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to what else did Charlie say? Charlie said China final action EB2 China final action date would move forward about 1.5 months, and basically it would stay consistent with that, keep on moving. And what do we see? Exactly. Yeah. And the last thing I see, I think this makes a good segue into what's going next. Charlie was saying the employment-based cases abroad from the consulates, they're really picking up.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of interested me, and this is how we kind of got on this. I started crunching some numbers, going through the Department of State statistics, and what I'm going to show everybody now is a chart of Department of State employment-based visa issuance at the consulates abroad from all around the world. Let's get that employment-based visa issuance. Here it is. So basically, these are the big numbers for the last 6 months of what the Department of State has been doing. This is what Charlie says is a pickup. And I see I see a pickup, but ultimately, Sam, I see a number that I think is a bit of a drop in the bucket. At the end here in November, this is the most recent data we have, somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 employment-based visas issued to consulates abroad.
And you also looked into some history, right? So first of all, clearly, as of October, there is a jump. There is an aggressive movement.
Yeah,
they're ramping up approval.
Yeah. I mean, really, right from August, it seems. And as Charlie mentioned, I guess maybe people are getting frustrated with or stuck abroad, and thereby they're going for consular processing, and that would seem to be to point to some of that, an increased employment-based people who are stuck abroad from COVID and travel bans.
Yes.
So, I think so. That's a chart that I found interesting. I was thinking about what Charlie said, and I was thinking if there's any truth to that. And I guess there's a little bit of it, but ultimately,
and that also obviously impacts if the trend is aggressive for the Department of State to approve cases abroad. That affects the overflow.
Yeah, I mean, it's one less case that somebody else. That's somebody who you might have thought they're not getting their visa abroad. They're getting their visas abroad.
Yeah. Now that chart, Brian, that you just showed us, that is employment based.
That's just employment based. Yeah. And Charlie said, it's going up. It's big business, right?
Yes.
And I said, I wonder, Sam, what proportion of the total that is. And here's what you will see. This is total Department of State visa issuance for the last 6 months of data we have available. And so we were talking about 2,200 or so. It was at its peak, right? For employment base. Here's what they do on a monthly basis for all categories. More than 35,000 is what they've been averaging for the last couple months.
And that is for
all categories.
All categories.
Of the immigrant visas issued to the consulate.
So, but if you're comparing the employment based.
Yeah. So let's go back
to the total.
The drop in the bucket.
There's just it's about less than
3,000 employment base at the peak in November versus how many total cases they do in November? More than 35,000. It's a drop in the bucket.
So they're not doing.
Yeah, but I got to say though, this Department of State data from the total visa issuance, what we know, Sam, is most of those are family-based cases, right?
So I am more interested, honestly, drop in the processing in the overall. So and I think you probably looked at comparative numbers back.
Yeah.
But so this is important, and let's kind of slow down here for.
I'll go fast, Sam.
Kind of make it clear for everybody. So when you see numbers going down, you're talking about that helps.
Yes, that's good for people.
Explain why it's good.
Sure. So most of the let's make ourselves full screen here. Most of the visas issued abroad are family-based visas, and the big boon for everybody in the employment-based category in the United States was the Department of State stopped issuing visas due to the COVID pandemic, right? More or less. And then those visas flowed over into the employment categories. Great for the folks waiting for a green card in the U.S. for employment-based because there's more available. Great, right? And basically, we're going to go back to the chart here. These, they're averaging 35,000, more than 35,000 every month for the last 6 months. And Sam, the $1,000 question I had is that back to pre-pandemic levels? Because if it's back to pre-pandemic levels, that means we can expect less of a chance of visa overflow. The employment-based categories for all our friends in the U.S. that are waiting for it.
So what you're doing here is you're comparing the average that was recently approved abroad to the average before the pandemic.
Yeah.
To project what are the chances of us getting overflow visa next year, helping the EB2 and the EB3 to move forward.
So here's just some random pre-pandemic months I looked at. Okay. January 2020, 43,000 visas issued. October 2019, 39,000. September 2019, 39,000. October 2018, 41,000. So are we back to pre-pandemic levels yet, Sam?
We're close.
We're close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a close can also make a big difference. So if I do a quick mental average here in those 3 months, that's about 40,000 a pop a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm looking here at the chart, if I'm going to do an average, I'm going to say it's probably the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking at it's probably the same. So they may have gone already to pre-pandemic approval rates.
Yeah, and just to give everybody an idea what the pandemic immigrant visa issuance rates abroad were, here's some numbers which explain why there were so many employment-based visas available in the last fiscal year. April 2020, 1,521 visas, immigrant visas issued by all the U.S. consulates worldwide. May 2020, 697 immigrant visas issued by all U.S. consulates worldwide. Pathetic numbers. August 2020, 6,100. So these numbers, versus the pre-pandemic 40,000-ish, that's where all these extra immigrant visas became available for people.
Okay. So give us 1 or 2 sentence conclusion to this thus far.
Well, I'll go back to the chart. If you want more employment-based visa availability, you'd like to see lower.
Okay. As it stands right now, numbers, the way the State Department started to abroad, we are looking at potentially. Of course, it's early, and there are conditions abroad beyond the consulate's control to change that. Right now, as we see things evolving, on a very early look, the overflow numbers will be conservative this year.
I mean, what this doesn't take into account, though, is the Omicron variant. I don't, we'll get the data for Q1 of fiscal year 2022 soon, and it'll be interesting to see those. Maybe we'll pick it up in a presentation in the future.
Okay. Excellent point, Brian. Thank you for the work. You also have looked at some numbers regarding USCIS approvals.
These numbers are just all sorts of fun, and I figure if we're looking at what Department of State's doing, might as well look at what USCIS is doing in their published data.
Sure.
And let's see what we got. So Sam, our first chart here is USCIS approved employment-based I-485s.
Right.
Wow. So basically, this is the 4 quarters of fiscal year 2021. That was the one that ended September 30th, 2021. Right. And what are we seeing, Sam? We're seeing kind of what we were hearing. It's basically a big push to see more green card approvals at the end of the fiscal year because they knew wastage was coming.
Still wasted 65,000, obviously, but shock. Right?
Yeah, it begs the question: what are they doing during the first, the first 3 quarters of the fiscal year?
I'm more curious about what they were on the second quarter. Look at the second quarter.
The second quarter is less than 20,000. I'll play the devil's advocate. There's COVID. But man, if they were able to get up to almost 90,000 approved during the last quarter, that's kind of upsetting, I guess. And Sam, I did look up the end of fiscal year, last Q4 fiscal year 2020. Mm-hmm. They got more at that time, 104,000.
Prior year.
Yeah, and again, I guess they get in a real panic about wastage. But again, call me crazy. I think I'd like some more smooth votes across the year.
Yeah, I mean, divide the number by 4.
Please, yes.
And shoot for that.
Yeah.
And hit the panic button early.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like a little kid remembering their homework at 11 p.m. Mm-hmm. It is so haphazard and unorganized, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, so, well, don't worry, guys. We have more charts because I really just had some fun tearing the numbers apart. And now we're going to look at, this is going to be USCIS received employment-based I-485s for the last 4
and we've
quarters.
been getting information about the Texas Service Center doing a bad job and Nebraska Service Center doing a bad job, so we wanted to kind of break down some more.
Yeah.
To look at things in an objective way.
Yeah.
And just find, let us know what you found out.
Well, yeah. So this is received cases for the last 4 quarters, and here's Q1 is when Visa Bulletin did a big time movement, and then everybody got to file their cases, and there it is. That's 80, almost 90,000 cases right there. What amuses me, Sam, is I don't know. I was very busy in Q1 of fiscal year 2021 because we filed a ton of cases in October. What's baffling me is that the peak hits in Q2. After January began. And, well, Sam, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, what does it point to? It points to the fact how slow USCIS was on getting their cases
They counted it for the second quarter where they probably received them in the first quarter.
Oh, yeah. They received all those cases in October, and everybody who got your receipt notice in, January or February of March 2021, well, that's it manifesting in the chart.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yes. Interesting. All right. Wonderful.
So here's where things get even more interesting in my take. This is going to be pending employment-based I-485s. Now, everybody's wondering, when is my case going to get approved? And this might give you some insight, at least what kind of progress the government's making. So this is quarter 1. They had, that's a lot. It's about 175,000 cases pending. It went up in Q2, as we know. They got more cases then, right? And it seems to hit the peak in Q3, and they seem to be bending that curve downward, right, Sam?
So Q3, give everybody a month so people understand.
That's that's ending 6/30/2021.
That's June.
Yeah.
End of June is when it peaked.
Right here.
At not exactly 300,000 cases.
Pretty darn close. Yeah.
Very close to 300,000 cases.
And they have them down to about 250,000.
Less than 250.
It means they're approving cases. It means they're approving more cases than they get in. Probably partly due to the help of the Visa Bulletin being reined in. Yeah, but it means they're approving more cases than they get in, and that's good. It means people are getting their green cards.
Absolutely.
Now, Sam, this is a fun one too. We talk about being very cautious with your permanent residence in the United States because you've been waiting on it for a long time and you don't want to screw it up, right? But people ask, how likely is it for my case to get denied? Well, here's USCIS's denied employment-based I-485 And the most interesting point, as I see it, is here in Q4, when they approved about, 80-some thousand cases, were they most productive. I mean, the denials didn't go up that much. They denied, 2,200 or so cases.
So the denial rate went less than half.
Yeah.
Maybe a quarter, because obviously moving quicker, less picky, they're rushing.
Yeah, that's the way to think about it.
Whereas when they were slowing down and net cases, finding reason to denying on higher rate.
Yeah, so it's just interesting data.
Hope your case to be approved somewhere between June and October of the year, because the denial rate, second half, less.
I guess they have more. That's a good point. I guess they have more time on their hands, and there you go.
Second half of the fiscal year, if you're chances to.
So now, Sam.
So that's a big one here that it kind of took me by surprise, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. So a big thing is everybody's angry at the Texas Service Center because they are not getting approvals out of Texas Service Center. We're seeing more approvals out of Nebraska Service Center than Texas Service Center, and I figured interesting talking point would be to look down at their USCIS's published data as to what they're saying these service centers are doing.
Right. Excellent point. Let's do it.
Here we are. So again, this is across the 4 quarters of fiscal year 2021, because that's the best and most recent data they've published. And here it is. Blue line is approvals by the Nebraska Service Center, and red line being approvals by the Texas Service Center. And Nebraska has generally been ahead of the curve, but bam, right there in Q4, Texas Service Center pulls ahead.
Well, significant.
Yeah.
But they were projecting just total numbers, right?
Total. This is approvals from each of these service centers.
So
and these guys handle the vast majority of the employment-based green for the data.
So the Nebraska Service Center tanked. Texas Service Center picked up, but still everybody mad at the
I like to think that the Texas Service Center was just accounting for the fact that they were significantly behind the Nebraska Service Center the entire time along the entire curve.
The curve bent. So
yeah.
There was a break in the curve for Nebraska. So they were going at a good rate. Then they slowed down.
Yeah.
Sometime in the third quarter of 2021, by June, they slowed down.
Well, and Sam, now
and on about the same time, the Nebraska Service, the Texas Service Center, picked up the pace. So there was a double thing. So there was a slowing down on one end and picking up the pace on the other end, which got Texas Service Center to approve more cases.
Yeah, and this begs the question, though, if Texas Service Center has picked up the pace, why is everybody still angry at the Texas Service Center? And I think
that's a good question.
I think the next chart sort of shows that one.
All right.
So there's our approval chart again, and here we are, pending cases. Again, this is across the 4 quarters of fiscal year 2021. And basically, you can see that coming into the fiscal year, Nebraska Service Center had about 20,000 cases, whereas Texas Service Center had about 35,000 cases. Essentially, so this is, Q1 fiscal year 2021. This is, October 2021, where right here, where everybody started filing their green cards, and then they got the rest of them here when they finally received them, right? And basically, Texas has always had more than Nebraska, right?
Consistently,
and basically, it left me wondering after I crunched all the charts for the last fiscal year. Basically, I was wondering when the big green card boom came in October 2020, who had more cases coming into it, and I have that data in front of me here, so it won't be, here we are. Coming into the fiscal year, so that would be the end of fiscal year 2020, Nebraska had 14,000 employment-based cases coming into the year, and Texas Service Center had 31,000. Huge difference. So basically, why isn't my Texas Service Center case getting approved? Because Texas Service Center had a big old backlog and then got a bunch more opted into their lap, Sam.
But their approval rate has improved, but obviously not enough to reduce their backlog.
Yeah, I mean,
they continue to have more backlog than the.
They have more cases than Nebraska Service Center still, and they had more to get through in the beginning, and that's that.
Yes, well, excellent work, Brian. Really, really wonderful.
I had fun going through that
yes.
data. I was making yes.
So in conclusion, the problem appears to be with the Texas Service Center workload and the amount of cases they're receiving, I mean, the Nebraska Service Center is a service center that's been there for decades. I mean, I remember visiting the Nebraska Service Center in a tour 20 years ago. Texas Service Center is newer. They just started. And,
Yeah, that's true.
And I cannot believe that the Texas Service Center is bigger than the Nebraska Service Center.
Well, I don't know, Sam. I think about things like filing addresses, right? And basically, where you would file is based upon whatever, well, you file your cases based upon wherever USCIS tells you. And I remember in October 2020 that most of the cases were going to the Texas Service Center in one way or another. I mean,
maybe Texas Service, maybe they're caught into the change of dynamics of the country. It's crazy how the service centers are located where most of the business is sometime, and obviously the economy in the U.S. has shifted, and obviously where's the largest economies in the U.S. is Texas, California, not in the Midwest where Nebraska is. And that also probably attributes to the difference in the shifting of the workload.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how much we send to Texas. I guess they'd have to rent some tractor trailers to move those cases around. I mean, USCIS does move cases around, but I've never seen a USCIS panel truck going down the road.
So it sounds like to me, again, it's a case of the USCIS not managing the workload properly.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're managing the workload properly, you would distribute it based on ability to approve.
Yeah, one thing that gets me is when I looked at this data, these USCIS reports, their quarterly reports of what they've been doing, where are all the employment-based cases? They're in Texas and Nebraska. And there are other service centers, I think it's like California, approved 20 or 60 in that time, probably another employment-based category. What gets my goat is that there are service centers who aren't doing these, and they have a massive backlog. Granted, I guess you got to retrain people. But I see just massive backlogs in these service centers, and I want those cases to be spread out.
Yeah. I mean, excellent report. Thank you, Brian. Wonderful presentations. Excellent work.
I had fun doing it. A little bit crazy.
Sounds good. So let's take a moment, and we will be back to answer questions. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions to answer. All right, so let's take questions, Brian. I'm going to ask my first question.
Yeah.
With the backlog at the Texas Service Center right now, okay, do you think the Texas Service Center should move some of those cases out, or do you think, what do you think the solution is? How can we resolve this? Because it's receipt notices is taking forever, months sometimes. Well,
they should be moved out. And I heard kind of anecdotally, I was in a USCIS field office talking to an officer after interview. She said, "Yeah, we got a bunch of cases from another office. It seemed to basically we had heard a while back that they were sending cases out to field offices to be approved. I haven't heard much about that, and I didn't bother pulling the employment-based approval data from all the field offices because that would make my head explode. But send them out to field offices. Send them out to anybody who's capable of approving it. Spread those cases around."
USCIS director recently stated that one of their top priorities is reducing backlog. So they have taken notes, this new administration, that the backlog is causing a big problem, and they are taking steps right now, and they say this is their top priority, is to move that backlog to a manageable level. So we'll see what happens. So let's take some questions.
I see a question, more of a comment that I like. Nice haircut, Brian, looking dapper. I agree. That's a position that I can get behind.
Love the haircut. Love the haircut.
You don't realize you need a haircut, then you realize
how. Put those on here. The questions.
Oh, they are. Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Making me.
Yeah.
I'm punishing Sam by putting all their questions on a monitor that's only particularly easy for me to see. So this is a question from Ram.
Yeah.
My EB3 I-140 amendment is pending from my previous employer. Can I interfile with an approved EB2 with my current employer, different employer? Thanks in advance.
So the I-140 amendment is pending. So the I-140, so he had a prior I-140 approved, and he's amending. I wonder what kind of amendments he's going through.
Well, I I think he's thinking back to October 2020. There's two options to downgrade your I-140. You can amend the entire I-140, or you can file a second I-140.
Or is he amending it because on a successor in interest situation?
That's a good question.
So I don't know what's going on here.
So, can I interfile as an approved EB2 with my current employer, different employer? So,
different employer. So the question is whether or not let's assume it's an amendment, not a successor in interest.
Yeah,
to make
that's
it
a pretty
easier.
rare scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, to interfile, multiple things that must happen. Let's go over this. The I-140 has to be approved. Well, it can be pending. It can be pending
this is
or
true.
approved.
Yeah.
Okay. And the priority date has to be current, meaning that the visa is available, right?
Yeah. So I think that's a good scenario then for this one.
Yeah.
So I mean, can you interfile in that scenario? Yes. Ultimately, one of the requirements for interfiling is your priority date has to be current. So it's a sort of thing.
Based on final action date.
Yeah.
Right.
So-
So that's the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds
So let's
good.
see what we got for our next question. Sam, you shall take this one, I'd say.
Yeah. All right. So, sweet seller, for how many more months do you think the current EB2 final action date will hold on or move forward without retrogression? That's an excellent question. So we were talking about this earlier, Brian. We got 2 months forward movement in the final action date, and then we have 6 months forward movement in the filing date.
No, apparently, sorry, I think we have final action date move forward 6 months.
The final action date moved 6
Yeah,
months.
yeah,
And the filing date moved 2 months.
Yeah.
So the bucket shrunk a little bit. So because of the movement, if you look
Yeah.
at it, I would say that it probably is going to. If it's going to be any retrogression, I think it'll be a few more months or
Yeah.
none possibly.
Well, I mean, Charlie said they were going to take cases and to estimate demand, and I say it seems like it's slowing down a bit. They're turning up the spigot by turning down the dates for filing, so it means they might be starting to think that they have enough cases.
Well, also the reason I do believe that I don't think it's going to be that significant of a retrogression, if any, is that the movement are decent but not incredible. It's not he's jumping at 1 or 2 years. It's only 6 months.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I think they're just cautiously doing it. I don't think there's going to be much retrogression.
Well, yeah, it also said that even after there is a retrogression, there's a possibility of moving it forward after that. So there you go. So next question from is it safe to travel on AP with I-140 approved?
That's a good question. I think it is. I don't have any problem with it. I mean, obviously, you have to understand that if there is a negative decision, and which is very rare on the adjustment of status,
We have the data to show it, yeah.
then the advanced parole will not be valid, and hopefully you have an H-1B case that is ready for you to let you back in the country. But otherwise, yeah, it's reasonably safe, in my opinion.
Well, I think we have a bit of spam there. I'm going to skip that one. There we are. This question from Ravi Shrell. So my underlying EB2 to EB3 downgrade amendment got notice of intent to deny.
Ooh.
With my EB2 dates current, can I interfile with an approved I-140 EB2 from another company to support the underlying basis?
Okay, so my underlying EB2 to EB3 downgrade amendment got notice of intent to deny. So let's put that aside for a second. And you have an EB2 with another employer, an I-140.
It's approved, yeah.
Yeah. So you gotta have. Do you have an I-485 with this EB2? To file with an approved I-140 EB2 from another company.
Well, interfiling, I
So
think, presumes that he has an I-485 pending.
So he probably want to move the adjustment of status from that EB2 to EB3 downgrade and move it to this I-140 EB2 for the other employer. The question for me is what is in the intent to deny? So if the notice of intent to deny.
Oh, that's a good point. If it's go ahead,
Yeah.
Sam. Yeah.
If the notice of intent to deny it relates to the I-140, underlying I-140, which is potentially is the case, then yes, I would say probably I would want to look at it carefully. But if the deficiency is in the adjustment of status application, then I wouldn't do that. Now, with a notice of intent to deny, I would not touch interfiling with a 10-foot pole. I would file a new adjustment of status.
That's true. Yeah, you can do that.
That is the smartest thing to do. I mean, just remember, interfiling is discretionary. They can come back and say, we are not going to allow interfiling during a notice of intent to deny.
Yeah.
Or something like that. So what would you do? File a new adjustment of status, and I think you're a lot safer.
Yeah, one of the requirements for interfiling is you have to have a valid basis at all times for your I-140 in order to move to a new category. And even though you have a notice of intent to deny, you still have a valid I-140 in theory. However, I mean, you're right. There's just kind of a massive cloud. Yeah.
And also, you have to remember that the final action date has to be current for the EB2 I-140 with this new employer for you to be able to interfile on the final action date, whereas you can file an adjustment of status, a new one, on the dates for filing, which is a more favorable date. Yeah. So that's another thing that has to be looked at.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep on going here through the questions. Here we are, Sam.
All right, Brian, take that one.
Oh.
Prediction.
Oh.
I love it.
What is the prediction for EB2 India to reach February 2015? Ooh. When will it reach? So
that is a long one. Right now, we're not even close.
No, I mean, so what have we talked about this evening, Sam? That basically Charlie right now, or not Charlie anymore, but his successor, whose name I haven't been able to find yet, we expect the Visa Bulletin, the EB2, to slow down, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe it can creep forward a little bit. But we also talked about, are we expecting to see a big overflow from the family-based categories? And the answer is maybe not, considering the productivity we've seen at the consulates abroad.
Well, I mean, that jump is a serious jump. And I know they've done this in the past, but I think unless we see a new legislation, and we're not going to touch this new legislation because all of us are bruised from raising our hopes and not being able to see anything come through from Congress. But unless there's a change in the law, that big jump or that massive forward movement, it'll take a long time.
It's a matter of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, our friend, yeah.
So, okay, Sam, you tried to give me that one. You're taking this one.
All right.
Oh, it's another prediction, Sam.
What to expect EB2 India 2014, June.
At least this year? Final action, no. Let me go back to my dates for filing chart.
January 2012. I am very sorry to disappoint you, my friend. And I'm not good in the prediction game, but I just do not see that movement in the final action date from EB2 from January 2013 to middle of a year and a half.
Yeah, movement. I mean, dates for filing is September 2013, but I mean, we're seeing we're seeing it slow down. It seems, the bucket's getting smaller.
Yeah, well, even that's
still
6, 7, 8 months. I mean, it jumped 6 months in 1 month.
Yeah, but the final action dates did. But the dates for filing only moved about 2 months.
Yes. So no, I don't see it happening this year. My apologies for giving you a negative prediction on that.
Yeah, got another bit of spam there. I'll take this next one. So from Sweet Seller. So August, September. Okay, I think these. August, September, no retrogression for EB3. November, EB3 retrogression. November, December, EB2 slow movement. EB2. So basically, why contradicting? I can't even say it, Sam.
In quick succession, thoughts.
Contradicting messages in such quick succession, thoughts. It's easier to type than it is to say.
Yes. Well, because we're dealing with a government that is jerky, unpredictable, and
poor quality data is usually our talking point on this one. Is basically what the Department of State gets their data with in sort of a slow.
Visibility is 3 inches ahead of our noses as we walk through this massive process. I mean, there's no visibility going forward. That's unfortunate, right?
Yeah, the big problem with the big slingshot, I think, is really attributable to the fact that Charlie wasn't getting information about those EB3 downgrades until the I-140s are approved, and they're just getting to most of those I-140s right now, really.
Honestly, how can the government in 1 quarter approve only 20,000 adjustments and turn around with the same workforce and approved 100,000
Yeah.
or 90,000,
Yeah.
whatever the number is.
That's the
3 or
great-
4 times. For me, that even.
That's a great big contradiction that's going to drive me insane.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do I don't want them to do a 90,000 every quarter, but I sure the heck don't want them to do 20,000 only per quarter, right?
Yeah.
So, so that's another thing that blows me away.
Well, a comment from Centaur, who's a regular viewer like our last one, Sweet
Yes.
Seller, saying the audio is getting choppy, wondering if anybody else is experiencing it. So we do monitor the chat the whole time we're doing this to make sure that, nobody's saying I can't hear you or anything like that. So please always let us know if we can do better. We spent some time trying to make ourselves, look and sound good on this thing. So please do let us know.
Yes. So let me see if there's any concurrence on the choppiness.
Yeah, well, we will see, but we're going to keep on answering questions in the meantime, obviously. So what does the pending employment-based I-45 mean? Does it account for both final action date and filing date applications? So I think you're referring to the USCIS charts. That should be both of them. These are cases as far as I can tell anyway. These are cases in hand with the agency. So it means they're not. I guess it means they're not discriminating by whichever one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Once you look at the feedback, see if there's everybody's saying that they're able to hear us well, or we're still.
I don't see any other commentary, but
Okay.
we'll keep on looking through it again.
Okay.
I gave the plea, so.
Yep.
So here's a question from Manoj K. For refiling second I-45 EB2 together with spouse, you need to be present in the U.S.
For refiling second offer together with the spouse, well, the spouse need to be present in the U.S. The principal beneficiary does not have to be present in the U.S.
Wait, I'm confused.
So for refiling second 485 in EB2 together with spouse,
Yeah.
the spouse need to be present. Okay, I understand the question. Well, yes, the spouse has to be present, and yes, the spouse.
For
has-
I-45 adjustment of status, you have to be physically present inside the United States. If
Any
you're,
adjustment of status for anybody, that person has to be present.
yeah. If
in
you're
the
not
US.
inside the United States, you do it through consular processing by applying for a green card through the consulate.
No exception to this
Yeah,
rule.
yeah. So that's something you may need to resolve by getting your spouse back to the U.S. On H-1B status, or for example.
Yes.
Okay, gonna keep on moving on here.
Yep.
So a good question from Sweet Seller. I did not include the third service center, National Benefit Center. Do you have any data from MSC? So I looked at the USCIS data, and where am I seeing the big centers of green card cases from the service centers? I'm seeing Nebraska and Texas. And one of the things, I'll be happy to look at the data again in the future, but I spent a lot of time staring at these charts, and I wasn't seeing anything from the National Benefits Center. Now, there's where your receipt comes from, and there's where what case is what service center is processing the case, and that could be the difference there.
Right. Right.
Yeah. That's kind of relates to it. It relates to this. So it's where does a case get completed? Service center or field office? Can you explain the workflow, Sam?
Well, obviously, the cases are done at the service center and completed at the service center unless there's an interview. And if there's a backlog, then they will move them to the local office. But normally, most cases should be completed at the service center.
Yeah, and Sam, this is going to sound crazy, but I don't know. I kind of want an interview now. At least I can get it to a local field office where there's in theory less backlog.
Well, yeah.
Okay, do I want an interview now?
No, because the moment they decide this is a case for an interview, that's the moment that they should have approved the case.
That's true.
But they don't approve the case.
One more thing I need to talk to Mr. So-and-so about.
And they
You're
push
right.
it for an interview. So an interview is not a good thing.
Point, yeah.
It's not a good thing, yeah.
So, big picture, most cases are approved by one of the service centers in the employment-based categories right now because they generally aren't interviewing people. And if you're going to a local field office, it means they're interviewing you.
Yes.
Yeah. So, let's check out the next question here from Newport. Let's see. Sam, would you like to do the honors?
Sure. My employment-based priority date is current, and my I-140 is approved. Congratulations. We filed everything last year, 2021, got biometrics, meantime got offer, okay, and they are ready to transfer H-1B, I-45 receipt note that has not passed yet 180 days. What is the question? I don't have a question here, but I think the question is,
Can I
most
change,
likely,
really?
is it okay to change?
Yeah. Well, here's the final question.
All right.
What can I do?
Okay, well, I think I would want to know how much short of the 180 days are you? If you are within a short period, and then how long the I-140 has been approved, right?
Yeah.
So those are critical factors. The I-140 is more than 180 days, right? Denial of an I-140 does not have an impact on transferring the H-1B beyond 6 years, so
Yeah.
that's really important for me.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, if the transfer is going to get the company upset in withdrawing the I-140, that would be something that I would be careful with. So
Yeah. If you're in that 180-day period.
yeah, so it is a situation that I would like to know a little bit more information. If you are weeks away from the 180 days, maybe ask the company to wait until the H-1B is approved, or ask him until the 180 days is reached before you move to a new employer would be wiser for you. If the departing employer is not going to withdraw the I-140, so you're in good shape there as well.
Yeah. So I got to say, the big question is the issue here is really it's kind of in the question, but it's 180 days. That's when the portability rules kick in, and you can take your I-45 to another employer. And if you're not there yet, you really kind of put your I-45 at risk.
With the I-140 withdrawal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So going to keep on going here. So for Bibia, just thinking, what are the common reasons of I-45 denial after I-45 approval?
Oh my goodness, do you have 3 hours?
We did a whole presentation on this at some point. We did, but it's worth talking about regardless.
Well, first of all, it's a lower percentage.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, what was the numbers we saw? We saw about 2,200 denials.
To 100,000 approvals.
Yeah, about like 90,000 approvals.
So that's 2.2%.
More or less, yeah.
So
I'll trust your numbers over my math, yeah.
Yeah, 3%, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I don't know what 3% is guaranteed 98, 97% results anymore.
Yeah.
But that's a darn good result. But what would be the denial of the I-45?
What's your first thought, Sam? Yeah.
Well, there's two types of denial in my head, at least I would break it down. One is procedural, one is substantive. So procedural is check is not written right, a page missing, something silly is gone, and then they issue a denial instead of giving you an opportunity to fix it. The prior administration was notorious at doing this.
Yeah.
They loved denying your adjustment and just watching you sweat. This new administration, although I haven't seen any issues recently, is going to be friendlier and more reasonable to deal with. So that's on the substantive, procedural part. On the procedural part. On the substantive part, it's a whole host of things. The job opportunity is not there. If they ask for a confirmation, criminal background, one that jumps at me. Very, very few medical background, but potentially. And then the one that really happens a lot is the travel and the abandonment issues.
Yeah.
Did I miss a
well,
big
the
one?
one that really got me was basically some sort of massive status violation issue where you've exceeded your INA 245K limits, which is kind of 180 days is a lot of time, but
But that shouldn't happen to you if you engaged your counsel in a way that they understood your case. We always recommend that you do a case review after you filed it and the rush. In October we filed thousands of cases and you rush through those questionnaires. And every time we do a review for a client, we find that you may have answered a question incorrectly that needs to be revisited and allow us to kind of fix things preemptively. So that would be something that you can do to avoid that. But denials, like I said, is a lower percentage and not a high percent.
Yeah. There we are. So from Ravi Kumar Reddy. So I have an approved EB2 I-140. I filed an EB3 I-45 downgrade. My priority date is October 2012, and EB2 is current. What are my options? Does a visa officer consider my approved I-140 EB2? So, The answer is no, not unless you tell them. That's the process of interfiling. Maybe about 2 months ago, we did a whole session on the subject of interfiling where we talked about the pros and cons of that. Big picture, Sam, interfiling, in theory, you can jump your I-45 to another category. The problem is it frustrates people, drives them mad because they don't get any feedback from the government, and they say, when's my case going to be approved? And the government doesn't take any action.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's clearly, in terms of the final action date now, January 2013, for EB2, if you are born in India, you're clearly in the current situation in the EB2. Would you do an interfiling in this case? It's a big leap. So EB3 final action date is January 2012. It's 10 months away.
Well, that means that's okay.
That sounds like a potential interfiling for me.
Yeah.
In the way I'm looking at it. I mean, obviously, you got to consult with an attorney and make sure that the advice is precise and has to have a kind of a holistic look at your case, so there's not a knee-jerk reaction. And yeah, absolutely.
Well,
so this is potential.
The other option, I gotta, again, check out our interfiling versus adjustment of status video. It's to file that second case. And the question is, do you think that your interfiling request is going to be picked up before they have time to process a second adjustment of status for you?
Yeah, he is current. I wouldn't do a second adjustment.
If you're current,
probably. I would probably try interfiling. I mean, to me.
Yeah.
But again, you need somebody to look at your case holistically so they can have a good advice for you.
Well, there's a good center always giving us good feedback, saying seems fine now.
We got if Center should be coming here to our president. He's a very committed, and few of you guys.
No, I mean we recognize.
We got to get him here with us one time.
We can have guests. We have space for more microphones. We do appreciate it when you guys tune in repeatedly. It makes us happy to see repeated names.
Okay, seems fine now. Thank you. I wonder what happened to that voice.
The magic of the internet.
Yeah, magic of the internet, exactly.
A question from Srivan Kumar Vanaparthi. Hello, I've downgraded from EB2 to EB3 in October 2020, and I-140 got approved. Congratulations. My priority date is January 28th, 2014. Since EB2 dates are moving, should I refile I-45 or interfile if the EB2 date is current? Well,
so he's still not current, 2014,
EB2,
but he's getting, India EB2 is January 2013 for final action date. And for filing, dates for filing, he cannot file an adjustment of status yet.
Yeah, he cannot.
Not yet, and nor can he interfile either.
Because his final, his date. So I think he's asking when his date comes up. It depends. One of the things I think about, Sam, is if your date comes up on dates for filing, and the dates for filing are quite a bit ahead of the final action dates, I'd say maybe it's worth that considering the second adjustment at that time.
Jumping on the adjustment, the second adjustment, the moment it opens up, provided that there is a significant gap, meaning that you're not very close. So if it opened up for you, and the EB3 is so far behind, I would do an interfiling. So there are situations where interfiling is better, other situation adjustments better. You got to look at it when it happens and look at your case overall and trying to give you a little bit of an overall view rather than
these are tough decisions to make.
Yeah.
Because you're really betting, how long is it going to take them to process my interfiling request versus how long is it going to take them to consider a whole new I-45?
And the difference between the filing date and the final action date plays into it.
Yeah.
If the gap is bigger, I would file another adjustment. If the gap is very small, and if the filing date becomes current, but the final action date is not current, I would jump on an adjustment. Yeah. You cannot do an interfiling anyways in that scenario. You have to do another adjustment if you want to take advantage of it. So it depends.
So here's a question from Ani Raj. Can I expect data filing for June 2014 in a few months? That's a question we had earlier. Somebody asking about that same period of time, and it's not like the craziest thing on the planet, but it seems the dates for filing for EB2 have slowed down. We only moved 2 months last time, and I wouldn't, in a few months, I don't know. Basically, again, Charlie said EB2, Charlie is one of the last things he said EB2 will be aggressive, perhaps slow down, and then maybe some movement again in the future.
So yeah.
It's hard. It's so hard to predict. You can't hang your hat on your date becoming current at a particular time.
Yeah.
You just have to take it when you get it.
Correct.
Well, Sam, how about this one for you?
All right, let's do it. So my priority date is April 14, 2014, EB3 India, and my wife priority date is July 2012. India as well, and EB2 as well. Oh, she's ahead of you in time and ahead of you in category. Adjustment status filed in 2020. Me as primary, wife as beneficiary. Now, wife's priority date is going to be current next month. Should we interfile? First of all, it seems to me, I'm just looking at the date, a earlier priority date and EB2 with priority date being ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 4/4/2014 in EB3 is about 2 years, give or take, off current, meaning that green card's not coming in anytime soon.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
So number one, you can either interfile or file another adjustment status to me under the EB2 because final action date is January 1st, 2013. And so her date is before that in the EB2, so she can interfile. She can also file for a new adjustment, a new pair of adjustment, and keep your adjustments intact.
Having two entirely independent bases. It's a hulking armored shield of a protection.
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah. So I honestly would like to file new adjustments for your wife, two new adjustments for your wife. And that would be probably the way to go. And here's how I feel about filing this. You know, people say, well, only attorneys are making money. That's baloney. We don't want you to file it with us. Go with your attorney, not with us. We don't care. But there is no question that filing two adjustments with two different bases, two different employment, give you an incredible protection.
You have two red carpets being rolled out for you. It's just a matter of which one you're going to walk across and hit the destination first.
I had a case where there was a husband and wife, and they filed two adjustments each. Both got laid off on the same day. So don't tell me that doesn't happen. Yeah. Back in 2008 when the economy crashed. All right.
Let's see what we got here. This is a follow-up from Nupur. So you asked, as you asked earlier, I-140 approved in November 2020, I-485 October 21. 90 days passed from the receipt date on that I-485. So he has a couple months left before really. Yeah. So my current employer is fine to hold I-485. It says basically it's holding that offer. That's really you can't have a new offer of employment. Until 180 days. However, do you think USCIS is very likely to understand that nuance, Sam?
Yes, I think so, honestly.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
90 days from the receipt date, my current employer is fine to hold I-485. But let me talk about the history. There has never been a questioning of that in the past.
Yeah.
And the informal opinions we got is that if it doesn't raise an issue once we cross the 180 days, we're not going to look back at it. There has not been an issue with this in the past. So if your employer is fine with it, and you have an opportunity and you're moving on, unless an RFE comes in.
Yeah, that's kind of. So what do you do? Then do you file the H-1B to change employers and then wait for the 180-day mark and to file a supplement J?
It all depends on whether the new employer is willing to do an H-1B. If it's a great opportunity.
I think I recall that from the facts.
Okay, so if the employer is willing to do it, absolutely, and then I'll wait for 180 days. But if the employer is not willing and will take him with an EAD as a great opportunity, and it's stable and solid,
Yeah, yeah.
I wouldn't say don't do it.
I would say yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
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 My current employer is fine to hold I-485, obviously meaning not to withdraw the I-140 in translation.
Yeah.
But it could be a scenario, Brian, where this employer doesn't have work for him.
Well, that's a different bag. You've changed the fact pattern on me.
Right, but that's a scenario that you deal with sometime.
Yeah.
And it is what it is.
Yeah.
You move on.
So there's scenarios under which we'd say, yeah, I mean, clearly you have to change employers.
Yes.
So hitting the 7 o'clock hour, we'll take a couple more here and we'll wind this up. So this is a question from Soumya. I got married to a U.S. citizen who filed for my green card in October 2016. However, he withdrew as we got divorced before the interview happened. I'm now on H-1B with an I-140 priority date of January 2019. Can I get the old priority date?
Well, two things. Number one, there is not an old priority date.
Yeah.
Because you are an immediate relative to a U.S. citizen.
Yeah.
The second part of the answer, which probably is irrelevant, but normally the priority date is not allowed to cross from a family category to an employment category in general. But there's no priority date for immediate relatives.
Yeah.
So the answer is no, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's see what we got here. We got a Ravi Kumar thanking us for answering his questions. You know,
Our pleasure.
We do enjoy it. And this is like sort of a follow-up on Soumya's question saying, I am from India and EB2 and basically transferring that. Yeah, unfortunately, that's a no.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for having having us for an hour, and we will see you next